Hey everyone, welcome back to Horse 2 Cinema, and today I'm going to be reviewing the newest Netflix, or one of the newest Netflix releases, Don't Look Up, directed by Adam McKay. I pretty much hate this movie. It's been a while since I've had that feeling about a movie. If you watch my Spider-Man No Way Home review, you know that I don't really like what Marvel movies are sort of doing to Hollywood and movies in general. But I didn't hate it at all. I think it's for me it just didn't resonate with me. It's certainly a passable movie and it's kind of hard to hate, I would say. But this is there are a lot of bad movies out there that are like bad, but they're, kind of unoffensively bad. And you can sort of laugh at them and have a good time. This is not that. This was really offensive, like, to my core. It was kind of unexpected, too, because the director, Adam McKay, I actually really like. He's done a lot of just really goofy comedies that I kind of grew up with in my childhood. Some of my favorites, definitely The Other Guys, Talladega Nights I really like, Anchorman is a classic, and even Step Brothers, while it's like definitely the most juvenile of those four I just named, it's so fucking funny and it's such a good time. It's definitely like have some of your goofy friends over and just have a good time with it, sort of thing. And 5 years ago or so, he made The Big Short, which is actually one of my favorite movies to date. I really love the book by Michael Lewis, and I think they do a really good job translating that. And it's a comedy satire that I think is really effective, actually. He made Vice a couple years ago. I wasn't as huge on that. It has some really good performances in that movie, but it's not like a bad movie at all. I just thought it was a bit overhyped. And now I think ever since he's made The Big Short, he's sort of delving more into this sort of like society critique, satire sort of route for his career. And I think that's the exact opposite way he should go with it. I think The Big Short, he should have just called it a success and just kind of went on from there, because this movie is horrible. Yeah, okay, let's get into it, shall we? So this movie stars Jennifer Lawrence, Leonardo DiCaprio, and like so many other A-listers. It's kind of absurd, honestly. And basically the premise is that Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio are scientists, and they discover that a comet is heading towards Earth, and it will basically be larger than the asteroid that destroyed the dinosaurs, and it'll have extinction-level consequences for humanity. There's been a lot of articles written about this, but essentially what they were going for was sort of a analogy about climate change. And the movie sort of talks about how humanity wouldn't sort of take an issue like this seriously, again using climate change as an analogy, because we're so obsessed with things like pop culture, celebrity, etc. Now let me tell you the biggest shock I had with this movie. I just really didn't find it very funny at all. And that was actually really surprising, because again, it's Adam McKay, and you kind of expect if he's going to be good at anything, he's going to be able to make me laugh. And yeah, I had a few chuckles, but there was nothing that really like resonated with me. There's zero jokes I remember from this movie. I only saw it a few days ago. The movie's being praised for its cast quite a bit. It, again, like I said, lots of A-listers in this movie. Cate Blanchett, Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep is in this, but they all just sort of feel miscast. Like Cate Blanchett especially does a good job playing like this Fox News style anchor, but it just doesn't work. I'm not really used to seeing her in a role like that, and although she does it pretty well, it just didn't really seem real to me. It just kind of seemed like it was like very forced. The only person I really liked in the movie was Timothée Chalamet, who, as he does a lot, played kind of a stoner dude who just sort of injected a little bit of life in this movie. I thought that was good. In terms of the tone, this movie is so weird because it's kind of all over the place in what it's going for. It's like it's an incredibly cynical satire. I'll get into the cynicism in a minute, but it's also very goofy at times. But for some reason, the film does kind of feel monotonous in a way, even though it's kind of all over the place at the same time. And the monotony is sort of this like really gross feeling of cynicism that is sort of trying to make you laugh at the same time, but it's kind of failing at it. It just really didn't work for me. Alright, now let's get into the meat of it. The real reason why I didn't like this movie. It has to do with the cynicism and just the terrible way of looking at this kind of situation. Everything in this movie, again with the cynicism, feels like it's the first idea that somebody would come up with for writing a movie like this. You want to talk about how people sort of ignore the most important issues of the day, so you talk about how obsessed with social media they are. Basically, you're talking about how obsessed with TikTok, celebrities, the most surface level shit that a lot of people don't actually really care about in real life, but there's this image that society is so wrapped up in that. And I just really don't think it's as bad as this movie portrays. I mean, I think people are certainly more caught up in this kind of nonsense than they should be compared to important issues like climate change, but nowhere near as bad as this movie portrays. I think most people realize that climate change, yes, is a bad thing and we need to do something about it. There are more complicated reasons why we aren't doing something about it. And this movie does not care about that at all. Some of the humor and the devices to show that we're really obsessed with pop culture and memes are just so boomer level and surface level. They use like, you know, goofy cat pictures or something like that, comparing Leonardo DiCaprio's outburst to like a grumpy cat or whatever. There were so many just like facepalm moments in this movie that made me just kind of lose faith that Adam McKay is even a comedian. And it's a satire, of course, about climate change. Now, what they're portraying in this movie is something that's very urgent, but in this case, of the movie, it's a lot more urgent. In basically less, I think it's like a few months or something, like the world is going to come to an end if this comet impacts Earth. Now, that is a lot more pressing of an issue than climate change. As important as climate change is, and it is having a drastically negative effect on the planet right now, and humans are causing it. We're going through sort of a mass extinction event when it comes to different species on the planet. But nevertheless, it's not as pressing as this comet issue is, just right off the bat. Now, it's a satire, maybe it isn't meant to be, maybe it's sort of like a bad analogy, it's sort of exaggerating, but for me that was sort of a glaring issue that I just couldn't really get past the whole time. But what's more important than that is that this film believes that the only reason we're not doing anything about climate change is because you, the average person, doesn't care about it. And that's just not something I found in my own experience. I mean, as somebody who studies political science and does care about the issue of climate change, I think there are a lot more complicated reasons why not much is being done about it. Whether that be our current corporate greed, or really just the greed of past generations who not only didn't care enough about climate change, but didn't really have the facts about it. And with all the carbon they emitted, we're still seeing the impacts of that today. But this film doesn't care about any of that. It's just saying that the average person doesn't care enough about this, therefore we're not going to do anything about it. It's such a terrible surface level satire. Also, I really hated the ending of this movie, not the obvious ending of the comet impacting Earth, but there's a sequence sort of mid-credits that happens that I just couldn't believe it. For one, it's a very obvious, not well thought out, cheap shot of like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and sort of the billionaire space race sort of thing. But it also, I felt like the only reason it was put in there was for one very cheap joke that happens at the end of it. And I just the movie just sort of ends after that. And I was just really perplexed, like, wow, they actually did that. So overall, I really just didn't have a good time with this movie. It kind of offended me to my core. I know people are kind of mixed on this movie, but I really hated it. I'm going to give it an F. First ever F on this channel. I don't want to give out too many of them. I do want this to be a place of more like speaking positively about films, but if I see one that I really hate, I have to just say it like it is. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to have another video out really soon. You'll probably see me in the same clothes reviewing a movie that I actually liked a lot more than this. So stay tuned for that, as well as more content, and I will see you guys in the next video.